Hello, welcome. And I've got a lovely guest today. Um, Arguably, probably one of the best, if not best, Steelsong players from looking at the records as well. Oyola on here, and some might know as like the Perdita build sort of player who a while ago in one of the DLCs brought Perdita in, and that just really took the meta by storm. But yeah, we just want to get into sort of your deck building and like cover. First, I want to talk about the Perdita and why that was a choice because we just weren't seeing that in any other lists really. So we'll cover that, we'll cover Seattle, we'll cover the future as well. But yeah, firstly, that first list that sort of got you recognised and you did so well with, what was the thought process going into that?
Yes. So I previously played Pixelborn. I don't really own any cards. I don't play in real life, pretty much. So, Set 4 was the first time I ever touched Steelsong. And I'm actually a game designer for my own indie card battler that I'm trying to release in a few years called Battle for Justice. And previously, I played Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh. I've played with elite talent on Magic Online, elite talent in Yu-Gi-Oh. So to be honest, I don't trust anybody's list. It may sound like an arrogant statement, but I really don't care what your name is. I will test every single aspect of the card. I removed the whole new world at some point. I removed turn one Cindy. I removed every single card and replayed it. I wanted to really test why we play this card. And because of that, I learned a lot of tricks about how to play Steel Song very effectively. And I also like to play a lot of different decks. I played every single color combination Pixelborn, aggro, control, mid range, just to see if it works or not. And I found Perdita very successful in an Amber Emerald aggro list where I used Pluto and Gaston to ramp and use Perdita to sort of like get the last 4 to 6 lore after the lead lows and everything has banished. And then I noticed with Steel Song, I struggled with Ruby Sapphire and Blue Steel, where I was unable to really find a way to get a durable body or just get value. And Perdita solves a lot of those issues. Post beat prep, I play it. And most Ruby Sapphires at set 4 really didn't have a way to have like another play in addition. If they still had Sisus, I could just get Smee, for example.
Hmm.
If they had Medusa, Perdita already got value. For Blue Steel, it was a nightmare. So from what I've gathered from a lot of people, it was like this was the problem matchup. And unfortunately, Pixelborn closed down, and I had that build, but I didn't own the cards. So I sent the list to a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic players I played in the past. They all topped their store championships. So then I slowly gathered the cards, and then Friday evening, I had to get the last cards. I don't own commons, so someone had to give me Robin Hood 1 drop, Ursula 2 drop, and Dallas was the first time I ever shuffled up the deck in real life. And then, yeah,
Oh wow,
then
yeah.
yeah, I don't really, again, I don't play in real life, so it's just I show up to a lot of tournaments with very minimal preparation. But that's what I love about Steel Song. It doesn't really matter to me. What matters most about mastering Steel Song is understanding the flow of the game. Like you don't have to follow a certain line of play. You just understand how the game is evolving and then just react in real time.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So I really want to get your thoughts into that because I think Stillsong is a deck where if you know how to play it properly, it's amazing. But of course, there's loads where it's just not played properly, and it just you basically lose to that. So overall, what were your tops exactly? You did top in.
Yeah, so I played 4 challenges this year. I got 66 at Atlanta with Chernobog Turbo. It was a deck I brewed up for set 3. Um, third place at Dallas, 51st at Vegas, and then Seattle 21st. So just 4 challenges this year.
Oh wow, yeah. Before we get into your Seattle list, though, yeah, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew your accolades before you explain how to play Steelsong properly. Yeah, I just want to. So, what do you think makes Steelsong? It's not as simple as just play aerial, sing Holy World, flood the board. As a non-Steelsong player, I would assume that would be your play lines. But what would you say is the best way to look at Steelsong and how to play it then?
So with Steel Song, it really all, I mean, this matters with all decks. If you really want to elevate your game of Lorcana, this is something I suggest to all players. On turn one and turn two, I spend 2 to 3 minutes thinking, forecasting how turn three is going to play out. Because I viewed Lorcana as a game of turn one and two is the early game, turns 3 through 8 is the mid game, and turns nine and further is the late game. And you want to establish presence by turn three. So I know what to do turn one. I know what to do turn two. Like, okay, play Cindy turn one. I'm really just thinking of what am I going to be inking? What is the board state going to be turn three? I view Steel Song as an aggro mid range deck. If you view it as a mid range control deck or play it as so, you're not going to be successful at it. You're not. It's arrogant to say that I'm going to out control Ruby Sapphire. It's the most prevalent deck in the format. So you had to operate it as an aggro mid-range deck. So I just really try to see, as an aggro player, I want to control the board state. I want to be able to gain a lot of lore. So I'm trying to see on turn 3 what will lead me to a board state where I'm going to have that aggro control. Sometimes I ink Ariel on turn 1, recognizing that I'd rather have Cindy turn 1, Ursula turn 2, and then Lawrence turn 3, where I have the two singers just controlling the board. I already have enough songs to mitigate the board state, and then Lawrence will just clear out for victory. And then if I have Rapunzel, that's going to give me the draw power. I really don't need um, a whole new world activated by Ariel. I could just use those guys to control the board and Lawrence to clear it up, and Rapunzel will be my one side of the whole new world. So I have enough draw power to continue the game state, continue my aggression. Maybe I have a very poor handle on the draw. How do I shift that defensive board state into an aggression? Maybe I don't even play a turn 1 drop because if Cindy's just going to get Let the Storm Rage On, I value Ursula 2 drop. And I just want to sure I hit all my ink drops. So sometimes I forego doing a turn 1 play. So that's where I would tell players just to pause and take a second back and just think, what am I going to be doing for the next first 3 turns? And I often think that the next 3 cards I'm going to draw or 2 cards are uninkable when I incorporate these decisions. If I draw anything inkable, then it just helps with my decision tree much better. But I'm just going to say I'm just going to whole new world, Zeus, whatever, just bad cards for the situation. So, yeah, definitely, I believe the biggest key to mastering Steelsong is understanding how to get turn 3 um, board pressure and board presence, because turn 3 is where Ruby Sapphire has 4 inks, so they could do the high rooms. They're ramping up to 5 or 6 the next following turns. Ruby Amethyst has Madam Mim Fox, Snake potentially. In the mirror match, they probably have a 3 guys, so that means Strength of Radiant Fire does 3 damage. So maybe mitigating the board state so Strength only does 2 damage could be very beneficial, which is why Lawrence or Ariel or even Pete will be able to stick around. So just really understanding what the format is trying to do at turn 3 will be very key to mastering Steelsong. And it's very hard for players in general to understand how to get out of the early game and be successful and get to a successful position in the mid game. It's very easy to say, I walked into B prep, I walked into C2. It's like very easy to find out those misplays, but I'm pretty sure if very few players can really identify that, oh, why did he ink that? Oh, that's the key to the matchup. I had to hold it. Like, no. You don't recognize that how your opponent's inking, they're not trying to go to that currently. So you should ink it so you ensure that you play your own game plan. I think players have a huge time recognizing these little minor details of how to ink properly, when to quest. And that's another thing I often do is I quest with Ariel. I quest with my 1 drop, either baiting my opponent to challenge it, so then I challenge back, healing up Rapunzel. And if they ignore it, because I played some very strong players, they recognize like, oh, I'm trying to bait them or force them to challenge so I could maybe Storm Rage On, clear out the thing. I gained 1, 2, or 3 lore. That 3 lore I may have gained turn 3 and 4 randomly on turn 13, 14 is the difference between me being on 17 lore and when I play Piglet, they're forced to do something, as opposed to me being on 14 lore where I play Piglet by itself, they can just ignore it. So that's like why I've also been very successful. I know when I can quest, or I understand that I'm not holding back. I'm not valuing like Singer too much. I value just gaining incremental points throughout the whole duration of the match.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. And the point you made about anticipating the next 2 draws would be uninkables, because especially when I play, it will be I'd love to play a Smee on 2, but that would mean my inking's just going to be horrible, because if I don't draw an ink, I'm going to have to ink the quill, or you know how it'll go. So you might forego having the character on board, but it means you actually get to ink properly. As you say, you might ink your 1 drop because you know it's just going to get stormed, and you value another 1 on 2 anymore anyway. Yeah, those really great points there. I think a lot of people will learn something from that. So going into Seattle, I keep popping your list up on the screen. Interesting points here. I noticed you've got 2 daisies rather than the full 4. You've got some Baloos in there, 2 piglets. But going into Seattle, sort of, what was your prep? Was the big green steel being back? Was that on your mind? How did your list sort of change for Seattle?
So I played 3 set championships and 1 Friday competitive event. The first 2 set championships I went to for my Seattle list was sort of like, I guess, a waste of time. I played Sapphire Amethyst, mid range Cogsworth Beats. I lost in the finals to my list in Vegas, and a player I gave like valuable, not I wouldn't say lessons, valuable advice via Discord, and she crushed me. So it just was a wake up call, like, oh yeah, this is how you play Steelsong, and when you play against it, it's oppressive. So I'm like, okay, discard Sapphire Amethyst's mid range beats. Then I try to be a little crafty. Let's play four harps, four flutes in a format with Pete. Let's just see if it works. And I actually did well in the Emerald Steel matchup. My idea was that flutes would be able to help with the turns 5 and onward because Emerald Steel doesn't really have a strong clock, and I could just get incremental advantage with flutes. Did work, but then I didn't realize Ruby Sapphire plays Hideaway. Killed flute, then I disregarded. I moved to Queen. That was my biggest thing. Right now, the 3 ink slot is very saturated. Robin Hood, Lawrence, Pete, Ariel, maybe playing multiple singers like Cindy One, Ursula, me, for example, Piglet. It's very saturated. So I rarely want to play Robin Hood. Robin Hood also gets Medusa. Also, post a whole new world. If I have 5 ink, shift Queen and 3-drop. It's much easier to do than just Robin Hood and 2-drop. I found that it's a little more effective. And then finally, Queen on turn 2 is Singer 5 automatically. Ursula on 2-drop is Singer 4 on turn 3. That Singer 5 on turn 2 is critical. And she will be the strongest character on board for the next 3 turns. You know, players asking, oh, am I looking for that whole new world turn 2 combo? Not really. I'm actually more geared towards if they play turn 1 Cindy, for example, if I have a whole new world or Let the Storm Rage On, Let the Storm Rage On. I want to control the board, and then I'll cast my free whole new world on turn 3 and 4 after I continue to play out my hand. I only want to do turn 2 a whole new world versus Ruby Sapphire because that's really the only time I'm going to get advantage out of it. So that's the only time I'm really looking for that combo. But most of the time, I'm looking the whole new world away. I just value the turn 2 Queen as being the biggest body and being able to Singer 5 and really control my opponent's board while I develop my board state. And then so then I played the Queen list on my last set championship. I won it, so I played an actual list out of gear towards. So when I'm not messing around, I have a good list and I was able to win that. Then Friday happened. I never got so many draws in my life. I got 1-0-6. I was like, it was like, I love it when I lose. Like if I go a playtesting session, I go 0-10. I thought it was a very valuable playtesting session. If I go 10-0, I have to really be critical. Did my opponent play well? Is my deck different? Did I draw well? I had to really analyze it. But when I get my ass busted, okay, I have something to work on. And I played against 5 or 6 Ruby Sapphires Friday, so I'm like, okay, this is the meta. I mean, and some of my melee record was a little sketch. I think I gave people some free wins just because I couldn't prize. I really don't care. I just wanted to play all 8 rounds just to get the practice, but I'd rather just give people the wins just so they could get the tickets or tiebreakers, whatever. I don't really care at this point. I was just really focused on the main event at that point. And yeah, so I did cut a few cards, but then I added Baloo. I cut out Bare Necessities. I think Bare Necessities is really bad. It doesn't really do anything against Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst. And I found Baloo sort of like a pseudo Bare Necessities, and because I'm trying to use Bare Necessities to discard the beat prep, but I could just play Baloo. You know, if they beat prep, okay, so I gain 2 lore. I'm still applying pressure. So that's why I put Baloo in there. I don't play Naveen. I think Naveen is very bad in Steelsong. The reason being Emerald Steel is so highly prevalent, so they're kindly they're discarding all your songs. Also, the way I approach Steelsong is I use all the songs turns 1 through 4, just really dictating the board state. You really want to cast Naveen with removal. You never want to cast Naveen with a whole new using effects with a whole new world because then your opponent has the first attack with the 7 cards as opposed to you. And being uninkable makes it not flexible. And then also, surprisingly enough, it makes Strength of the Raging Fire uninkable because you want to cast Naveen with tempo, with removal. So now I hate, like I mentioned previously, like I love Steelsong because it's so fluid. I adapt to the board state. I hate any cards that forces me to play a certain way. I have to make certain choices. I just want to react in real time. So I felt Naveen just restricted my ability to play Steelsong that I'm thinking about how do I get value out of it. So I did cut Naveen. I just think it's not that good right now. And then I upped the Piglet count. I was on 1, went up to 2, and then it's pretty much a standard list. And then Seattle happened, the main event, and I was fortunate enough to top again.
Yeah. As you said about the Friday events, is we don't have them in Europe. That's the first time doing one for me, and they can either be really rewarding experiences where you learn a lot, you get a practice in, or they can be shattering and really throw you off your game, as I saw a few people did. But I was fortunate enough to do quite well. So yeah, going your
Nice.
rounds into the Swiss, sort of, was Ruby Sapphire still on your mind then? If you faced six on Friday, that would probably throw me. Even on Blue Steel, that would throw me, as I don't want that matchup.
Yeah. So round one, I drew against the Ruby Amethyst player who top forward. He was a good player, but I would had such PTSD that I mulliganed a good hand versus Ruby Amethyst. Obviously in the blind, I don't know what they're playing. To a good hand versus Ruby Sapphire, and I was like, most of my success in the previous DLCs has been against Ruby Amethyst. I 2-0 the matchup. I honestly think it's as close as a buy as it can with Steelsong. It's one reason to run Steelsong. If you anticipate in a best out of two format, a lot of Ruby Amethyst. So I was a little disheartened that I got a draw because I was just having such PTSD. I kept thinking every round, like, oh my God, am I going to play Ruby Sapphire? Am I going to play against Ruby Sapphire? So, yeah, I only played one in the Swiss, which was a very challenging match, and I 2-0'd it. But yeah, definitely Ruby Sapphire threat the whole tournament was always in the back of my mind. And maybe a little angle shooting. I just sometimes look at people left their life pad around, and I'm like, I would look, I'm like, I don't see any huge increments from like one lore to 10 lore. So I'm like, oh, you must be running a mid range deck. So I'm like, okay, like if you left it open, I'm going to just use that public information. Obviously, I don't know what they were playing. I'm still guessing, but if I just saw, oh, one lore here, two lore here, I'm like, oh, thank God you're not playing Ruby Sapphire. I don't care what anything else you're playing, but Ruby Sapphire was always on my mind. Like, it's just like it's a draw. It's a hard matchup. Best out of two I view as a draw. Best two out of three, I think I could win it, or like it's still in their favor, but I feel much more confident in best two out of three against
Mm.
Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah, so going into the sort of, what was your last round sort of you faced against, making into
Um,
that cut?
so I was fortunate enough to be in a position to draw the last couple rounds, but
Oh, okay.
the last round that I played was against Ruby Sapphire. The player actually won the competitive constructed event, and he's done well at other DLCs. Very strong player. We both drew very bad game one. Honestly, I think this would have been like feature like game of the tournament if it was under stream. Like it was very complex. Like he was questing with Tipo. I was questing with one drops Queen. I had two whole new worlds since like turn four, turn five. The game went to turn 17. I'd never casted it because I just was very I tried to be very disciplined that there was no point of me ever doing it because it's going to get them back in the game. We were both on top deck mode, so yeah, it was a very challenging game one, and then game two. Since I'm on the play, I guess to go back to how to be successful in Steel Song, perhaps in the DLC is whenever I win a die roll, I like to go first game two, just because I view it as an aggro mid range deck because of exactly what happened in this round, round six with against Justin, where game one I mean, he probably knew what I was running just because of my name. He said he recognized my name before, but I could squeak some wins as an aggro player because maybe my opponent mulligans improperly. But game two, since they know my list, they know my approach or my deck type, then they can mulligan accordingly, but they be on the play. So for me, I hope I could squeak a win on the draw, and then game two on the play. Obviously, I know it's a mulligan, or just the aggro just being the fastest, just being so fast that I could just win without even like proper mulligans. I just it just aggro does what aggro does. So
Yeah,
yeah.
entirely. It's going into the day two then. So how will those two games, sort of, how do they feel?
Um, so I get played against Emerald Steel. I do think Emerald Steel at the highest levels, let's say I'm playing against Zan,
Mm.
it's slightly in Emerald Steel's favor. But realistically, I know out of 9 rounds, Emerald Steel, I'm not going to be playing against Zan 9 rounds. I think it's favored. I view the Emerald Steel matchup as the or this is how I actually view matchups as a whole when I'm debating about when to take out, what deck I should bring to a tournament. The best hand with this deck versus the best hand of another deck, who's going to win? Average versus average and below average versus below average. I cannot construct a 7 card hand that beats the best Emerald Steel hand. They just
Mm.
remove all my songs. They gain too much advantage from Diablo. Ursula 3 drop, just control my board. I can never construct a hand that beats it. But any above average, average, or below average, I feel Steel Song, we have so much play to it, so much agency on our moves, our ink choices that we can outlast, out aggro, or just go wider to combat Emerald Steel. So I felt very good about heading to the Emerald Steel matchup as long as they didn't just draw the nuts. And both games he drew solid, and I was able to 2-0. It was just it was just I'll be honest, I can't really recall what happened. I think I just really controlled the board state with songs. Like I just understand the matchup quite well, just ensuring that Strength of Rage and Fire had minimal characters on board. Like I would sometimes just quest, forcing him to challenge back, and now that thing is weaker, I can challenge back. I just really want to control Strength of Rage and Fire to have only 2 characters on my opponent's board. And also, I'll be honest, I did get lucky. I remember game 2. I drew answers to Diablo. He played 4 Diablos. I had answers to Diablo like 4 times. So he did draw a couple of cards, but it could have gone out of control, for example. So I do think I was a little fortunate that that happened. And I think there was maybe one misplay that it was unnecessary for him to quest with Pete, for example, and then I challenged back with Ursa 2 drop, and then healed up a Rapunzel. So I just drew 3 cards. So that's something like for players to recognize, like just understand, why you're questing, because especially against Steelsong, because that got me back into the game, and it's a play I even messed up on Friday. I did that same exact thing. I quested a Pete against the mirror match, and like I had game, and then they just drew 3 cards. I'm like, oh shit. So I was really glad that Friday kicked me in the butt, because it just really made me a sharper player.
Yeah.
And then top 32 against I played against Ruby Sapphire. Game 1, I was fortunate enough to squeak a win out. He was on the play. Game 2, very strong. Ruby Sapphire, Ram, Hiram, just couldn't do much. And then game 3, unfortunately, it was a very tight game. I mulligan very hard for Queen Shift. I usually keep 1 Rapunzel in my opener, and I felt my hand could be very strong. Like I knew I had like some bad cards in my hand, and I had 1 drop Queen, so I mulliganed 6 instead of 5. I probably should, in retrospect, I probably should have kept the 1 Rapunzel, but I elected, like, you know what, I really want to get the Queen Shift. Fortunately, it didn't hit it, so my hand got way worse, and I was able to do an early aggression, but that Rapunzel would have definitely helped me draw something. And then at a key point, I played a whole new world. I drew 5 songs and Queen 1 drop and like Pete. So there was no really so I was at like a 17 lore. And unfortunately couldn't get the last 3. And it happens, like I had good luck this weekend. I didn't play against a lot of Ruby Sapphires, so it's variance, and I was just glad that I was able to be top again. So my goal was to do well, and then top, and then just solidify myself as like, hey, this year, I don't take the Lorcana too seriously, but according to the stats, I'm top 10 on performances in the challenges. So I'm very glad that all my prep in Pixelborn and just was very impactful, because realistically, I don't play too much in real life. I don't own too many cards. I'm very busy with my job. I'm a biomed engineer that travels 60 hours during the week. The weekends is for my family. So like I'm very limited with my time to dedicate to Lorcana. But after this year being successful, I think 2025, I want to put a stronger effort to playing Lorcana, being in part of the community, because this is a wonderful community. I really enjoy this game. I came from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, a Magic background, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of dirtbags there that but in this community, there's been nothing but gracious players. Like every time I'm successful, people cheer me on. People, like, if I'm like down, like I've had some issues in my personal life, people message me like, hey, how are you doing? And it's just like the love is real. So it's like, they're not trying, there's no ulterior motive. So I really do love being part of the Lorcana community, and I hope I'll continue to be a great ambassador for the community. And it's definitely a game that I want to be part of my life moving forward, especially in 2025.
Yeah, there was a lot of when I did to Seattle, and a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh players just saying how great it was that it's not like that was. And of course, I came from Pokemon, where it's I think it was a little bit more positive. It's a lot more family orientated. They have a junior and a senior events, so you bring your kids, they play there. So it's a family environment. So it was very hard for that to become as toxic as the Yu-Gi-Oh one was. Just before we go on to the last point, I wanted to mention, so the final was Wonderland. And sorry, I forgot the other gentleman's name, but it was Emerald Steel versus Steelsong. And just like I always thought when I played that in practice, Green Steel does have the advantage. And two of the cards that I always think about how a Steelsong tries to deal with, I suppose they don't, is Prince John and the Muses, as they both have wards. it would be very hard to remove it, and they can be quite a pain for most of your characters on board. So what's the sort of Steel Song reaction when you see those cards? Because they're likely just going to stick.
So this is where you have to definitely pressure and quest often. I will quest with one drop Cindy, quest with Ursula, Ariel, just so the muse can finally challenge back. I think Luke's list only played two muses. I could be
Mm,
wrong. I think he, but when I see a list like that, I'm much happier.
mm,
It's just really just questing and just putting on the aggression. I do ink a lot of my songs. I do mulligan typically to just a strength of the Raging Fire. So in the event that they play Diablo, for example, or I just have a way to just ink it, just ensure I hit all my drops. I just value characters more than my songs, and just hope I draw the songs later on. But against the ward, it's just really just questing and forcing them to consider challenging back,
mm.
or put them in a board state where they want to start questing with Muse and Prince John, because he put so much early aggression. Because if I'm at 15 lore and they're still at 2 or 3, they're gonna have to start, questing back. Even all the removal, all the draw, they have to put some pressure. So it's just valuing Lawrence in the matchup highly, playing Pete in critical turns where they're not gonna draw anything for Prince John. So like I don't play Pete straight up, but sometimes I'll play Pete in a board state where I'm gonna quest of everything, and then the only way to interact back is challenging back. So um, I would have to see like hands. I do. The runner up. He actually thanked me a lot throughout the weekend. I'm very impressed with his performance, because I think day one, and this is just something for all your viewers to like listen to, is he was 104. He had to 2-0 like the last 4 rounds, or he was not going to top. And we were talking Saturday. He's like, like, I thank you for just opening my eyes on how you're playing Steelsong, going wide, because I posted playing 20 Lords more. I don't care about mulligan guys. I don't care about um, keys to the matchup. I come from Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic. I really can't sculpt my hand. I have to play with what I'm given at
Yeah.
times. So I'm just like, and he was very grateful that I just like changed his perspective on approaching Steelsong, and he was able to 2-0 and everything. And then yeah, so I think that matchup, unfortunately, I think from what I've gathered, that it could have gone his way. But yeah, I think he just misevaluated like a situation. I think he played a whole new world after casting his characters. I think he should have just like held it a little more. But it happens. The bright lights. He did a great, like, it was, he was a very, yeah, it just like it happens. Like we all make misplays. Like even myself, like I make a lot. I make misplays, and it's just how you react to it, or just having short-term memory. Like I like, yeah. So I think yeah, I was really happy for him, and then yeah, we took a few photos, so I'm glad he did well, and just
Yeah, like you say, it's a long 2 days, and when you're on camera as well, and just everything, you've got to take all them variables into account. Right, good stuff. So just to cover one last thing, is sort of set six. Have you had a look at any of the cards? Anything interesting at all for you for Steel Song, or just in general?
So I'll be honest. If I'm playing Steel Song Continentals, I probably made a bad choice. I did poor in my testing. I don't think Steel Song can really compete anymore with the tools I'm thinking with Sapphire. Even Amethyst, like there's a few cards I'm interested in, as a Genie, for example. Maybe put it with Sapphire with the ramp, and just go to town, just resolve that, and just draw your whole deck. I've played like degenerate strategies like that before with Chernobog Turbo, so I'm very familiar with the Amethyst degeneracy of just drawing a million cards with their one drops. Sapphire Steel's another deck I'm looking at. I think Sapphire got a lot of tools with the ramp. Yeah, the set six definitely seems like it's shaking up the format. I feel set four and set five, which is basically set three meta, faster or more efficient. So I'm really excited for set six. Even maybe the locations with Ruby, Amber Ruby. But Continentals, to be honest, I mean, it is a known fact. I've talked to some of the pros here. It probably will be its own metagame. Perhaps everyone's on the control route, and then people metagame for all aggro. So they'll just like, oh, I'm going to do the aggro and burn deck. The guys I was working with at the Airbnb this past weekend ran the Ruby Amethyst burn deck. And
Mm.
on Friday night, they wanted to play a Steel Song matchup. They just like, hey, I'm one of the better Steel Song players. Let's see how the matchup goes. It was like 95-5 in my favor. It was not a matchup
Yes.
at all. Like
Yeah.
it was bad. But against the rest of the field, it did amazing. So perhaps maybe people are forecasting, oh, this is a burn and aggro um, response to the control because a lot of the top players like to gravitate towards control decks. So then maybe Steelsong is able to rise within it. So Continentals is going to be very interesting. That maybe there might be just like metagames within metagames within metagames that may not be truly reflective on the DLC. For example, like I really don't think Steelsong. I mean, I think Steelsong's still like a 1.5 tier 2 deck, but I just think Sapphire just got too many tools. But Continentals might just be its own thing. So I'm excited to see how the European Continentals play out, and then that'll definitely play a role in how U.S. Continentals goes.
Yeah, no, it is going to be interesting for the Continentals because, as you say, you can sort of predict maybe what the meta game will be like and see what people have been topping with, and are they likely to stick with the deck, or are they a player who might want to play a different deck. And yeah, set 6 Sapphire is just they've got too many tools now. I don't know how we won't be going to just a huge percentage meta of Sapphire with the new sale card. They've got
Exactly.
already all of the ramp options, and sale is also another way to make the deck ramp and be more consistent. And in set 5, they got Tipo and Visions of the Future, both 2 cards that let you ramp and then be more consistent with what you draw. But this card just does both those things, so now you can add that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like it's a little annoying at this point because they have a lot of cards that honestly should be uninkable, and I think there should be a trade off between cards power with uninkable, which they've been doing. But I think with Sapphire lately, it's been far too many inkable choices, and that now their deck becomes way too consistent. Set 3 and set 4, Ruby Sapphire struggled a little bit just because they had to introduce a good amount of uninkables, but now it's just like way too polished with all their inkables. Like they could just adapt to any gameplay and ensure that they hit Sisu, beat prep, or whatever they need to do.
Oh, yeah, entirely. Right, okay, I'm going to say thank you very much there. Is there any shout outs,
Yep.
anything at all you'd like to say before I sign off?
Yep. You could definitely follow me on Instagram, Chris Oyola Oyola underscore, and my Twitter, which is I always forget it.
I'll link it in the description as well.
Yeah, Oyola underscore Lorcana. I'm definitely trying to build a little social media presence. I'm a little annoyed that I can't get a feature match. You know, like, come on, give your boy a feature match. Let me show the world how to play Steelsong. But no, just like, I'm just trying to ingratiate myself in the community. Again, the Lorcana community is amazing. If I can help in any way, I get DMs a lot. Like, again, the guy who got second place, he was DMing me on Discord like in September, and we were just talking Steelsong. Like, you can DM me on Instagram. I'll respond to you. Maybe not right away. I do a lot of stuff for my work, but I'm not one of those, I guess, pros, quote unquote, that you got to pay me $20-$30 to talk to me. Like, just message me. I'll reply back. Like, I'm not gonna, I want to, just be a strong ambassador for Lorcana, and I will be doing training shortly. I am. There will be some postings in the next couple of weeks of like training. I'll be joining a team to really work with Continental. So there's a lot of changes in myself. Uh, yeah, I just really focus on Lorcana in 2025, and definitely I want to do all the little preparation of how to really build my presence known in 2025. So hopefully Continentals and of course Worlds that I'm able to represent the community very well.
Yeah, no, entirely. And about the featured match, I was the same. I thought I travelled across the pond. I'd gone 2-0 first 2 rounds. I thought round 3 has to be my feature match, but still yet to get one. So
yeah.
But yeah, lovely to have you on. And yeah, I'll mention everything you said. I'll put it in the description as well so people can join. Can follow you on Twitter and things like that. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye.